Ambient occlusion is a shading method that helps add realism to your objects by taking into account attenuation of light due to occlusion. Okay, what it does is it's kind of like a crude version of global illumination, and it can add lots of nice little detail in the cracks and crevices and where two objects meet. And what I thought we could do is take a look at how to set it up, how to use it, and some possible uses for it. So I'm in this video I'm going to use this Mech Warrior built by Farrah Welch, and it's a great object to work with because it's got all these little areas that the ambient occlusion can take advantage of. Okay, so let's start by just taking a look at what ambient occlusion is going to do. If I do a quick render, we can see the object without any shaders. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna zoom into an area and do a render just so we can really see. Okay, so here's what we have by default. Now, if I'm going to use the ambient occlusion, I'm going to need some kind of shadow. So I'm going to go to Render, Render Globals, and turn on Ray Trace Shadows. Okay, let's go ahead and open up the surface editor. And there's one surface on this this object just to keep things simple. I'm going to go to Edit Nodes. I'm going to make sure that the nodes are active, and then come over to Add Node, Shaders, Diffuse, and you've got Occlusion and Occlusion 2. They're just two different setups. Occlusion 2 has more options. I'm just going to put both of them out here, and you get different results from each. But for the most part, we're going to be using Occlusion 2, and here's Occlusion. But you should try out each because each give different results. So I'm going to head over and plug this right into the diffuse, and it's going to convert the RGB data to a scalar value. So I'm going to do a quick render, and as you can see, we've got all this shading going on. Now, it's a little noisy. If we up the anti-aliasing and up the samples, we can kind of clean that up a bit. But what we're seeing is it's almost like dirt and grime has gone where the geometry is meeting and where these creases and crevices are. And it's a great way to give kind of that global illumination look, but also to add those kind of details in to the areas. Let's go to one other area to take a look at just to see what's going on. Okay, here's another example where you can see we've got, it looks like where rust or dirt and grime would collect. So it can be used simply as that. You do your regular surfacing and then add the ambient occlusion node, and you're up and going with some extra little detail. Now, let's actually take a look at how we could do that. I'm going to just unplug this for a second, and I'm going to go and add turbulence. And I'm going to go kind of crazy with the colors just so that we can see without a doubt what's going on. I'm going to go with this bright red, and for size I need to size this down. And I'm going to plug that into the color, and let's do a quick render. Okay, and I've got it everywhere. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the occlusion node, and instead of plugging that into opacity, I want the exact opposite. So I'm going to go grab an invert node, plug this in here, this in here. Okay, and let's do a render. Okay, so I've started adding rust to my object here. I'm gonna do one more render just so we can see the whole thing. Okay, so where rust might collect, I've got some nice little rust stains on my object, and I was able to quickly place it. You know, plugging that ambient occlusion into the opacity is a quick way of, yeah, see, here's a good example of where we could just put, instead of randomly placing rust, we can put it where we want. I mean, that could be dirt and grime as well. So that's a quick way of adding it, and ambient occlusion made it pretty pretty easy. So what we can also do is use the ambient occlusion node. We can use that to build our occlusion pass. Now we're going to set up the scene a little different to do that, but it's pretty harmless. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw that out of the way. And I'm going to unplug, well actually I can keep that plugged in, but I'm going to plug this into the diffuse shading, and that's going to kind of take over from this, so that this is kind of worthless right now, and I'm just going to use the ambient occlusion node into the diffuse shading. If I were to do a render of this, we'll get a basic idea. Okay, but what I want is I want to get a real nice occlusion pass. So I'm going to go over to my light properties panel, and I'm going to turn the ambient intensity up to 100. I'm going to turn my light off. Okay, so now that I have this up to 100, the whole object is being lit from all directions, and we don't need that light. Okay, I'm going to go over to my backdrop, which is Control F5, and change that to white. Okay, and bring this back to a render. Okay, and I'm starting to get my occlusion pass that I can use in compositing right there. Now again, a little noisy, but I don't have anti-aliasing on just for this video so it runs a little faster for us to see. I can also up the samples, and it gives us something that looks similar to global illumination, but again, remember, this is a crude approximation of full global illumination, but it can be pretty fast. Now with final gather radiosity, you might find that you might see that speed isn't an issue when it comes to working with that. But as you can see, we could also use the ambient occlusion node just to add that nice little detail where when we were working on the tofu, the vegan zombie animated short, we used the ambient occlusion to help kind of fine-tune where the walls met the floor and where the molding was. It just added that nice little shading, that nice little shadow that we could help kind of really give it that nice 3D depth. And also, again, I'm a big fan of adding dirt and grime and rust and things to that. So whether you're wanting to just do an ambient occlusion pass or add details to your surfaces, but put them in strategic places, the ambient occlusion node could be the solution for you. And remember, you've got a couple options. We can always go to the node editor and choose occlusion 2. We could add occlusion, and if you want to, you don't even have to go into the node editor, though that's a scary thought for me. I'm really loving the node editor, but we could just come over to shaders, come over to Gmill, and set up occlusion here as well. Just in this case, we would want occlusion in occlusion diffusion to turn that on. Okay, so again, just a quick look at using the occlusion nodes for ambient occlusion in the node editor, and we got a little sneak peek of Gmill as well, and there you go.